He was a pathetic, lonely loser who had no friends and spent his time playing video games and
What do you mean by that?
But one day, after being sold some trash game by a hot salesgirl, he got stuck inside a game and could only leave after finishing it. This all begins with Hiroshi Yuki, who just walked out of yet another future planning meeting with his teacher, and honestly, it felt like he was stuck on repeat mode. This wasn't his first counseling session, and just like every other time, he still had no clue what the he wanted to do with his life. The teacher tried to be helpful and suggested he should think about joining the school athletics team again. From the way the teacher talked, it was obvious that he was gooning real hard. So that made him give up sports completely. Whatever it was, it had messed him up so badly that even now, he refused to train or go anywhere near a track. Instead of actually listening to his problems, the teacher started throwing random ugly motivational quotes at him that didn't match the situation at all. Hiroshi glanced at the book lying on the desk and instantly understood the teacher had clearly just finished reading some self-help gooning bestseller and was trying way too hard to sound wise. The session finally ended, and Hiroshi headed home feeling just as lost as before. While crossing the school grounds, he noticed students practicing hard, running laps, and pushing their limits. One boy with bright orange hair spotted him and rushed over. They knew each other pretty well, and just like the teacher, this guy also told him to start training again. Hiroshi didn't even hesitate, same answer as always, nope. The orange-haired friend knew there was no point arguing, so they said goodbye and went their separate ways. To avoid dealing with his ugly past, Hiroshi had escaped into virtual reality games. Today was a big day because a new title he had been waiting for was finally launching. Final Quest, Chapter 22. He was already hyped as he walked toward the game shop. But of course, life decided to mess with him. Out of nowhere, two ugly street guys stepped in front of him. Just by their stupid faces, it was obvious what was happening. Classic bullying. They claimed they were collecting safety fees and demanded his money. Hiroshi handed it over, heart pounding, while they counted it with creepy smiles. Before leaving, they even joked that if he ever wanted someone beaten up, he could just call them. Hiroshi thought, yeah, I'd start with your two ugly asses. As soon as they moved aside, he sprinted to the game store like his life depended on it. But when it was time to pay, disaster struck. He didn't have enough cash. That's when his brain replayed the scene from earlier. He had accidentally handed over 10,000 yen instead of 1,000 to those thugs. His stomach dropped. No money meant no game. Completely crushed, he walked out empty-handed. Wandering aimlessly, his legs stopped in front of some dusty old shop called Kisaragi Games. With zero expectations, he pushed the door open. The place looked frozen in time. Every game on the shelves was years outdated. He walked up to the store owner, a woman with long snow-white hair, with big heart and massive plot, and asked if she had the latest Final Quest release. She burst out laughing and went on a rant about how that franchise had been dragged out forever and should have ended ages ago. Hiroshi didn't care about her speech nor her big plot. He only wanted to know one thing: did she have it or not? She kept complaining about how boring the series had become, mostly filled with pointless item collecting. Annoyingly, she was totally right, but he wasn't there for a lecture. He was about to leave when she suddenly said she actually had the game and even dropped the price to 10,000 yen to make up for insulting him. Excited, Hiroshi paid immediately, but the moment the disc was in his hands, he realized something was off. This wasn't the game he wanted. The shop owner had already stuffed the money into the system and refused to give it back, insisting this game was way better. She explained it was a full dive VR experience focused on ultra-realism. Hiroshi was furious. Then she added that the game was meant for adults only, which somehow made things worse. Still, she kept sweet-talking him, tempting him to leave childish games behind. She grabbed his hand and introduced herself as Riona, claiming she played the game herself and would guide him through it with her big caring heart. Completely overwhelmed, Hiroshi agreed and left with the game and massive plot phone number. Once he checked the box, he noticed the game was made 10 years ago. He tried calling Riona, but the automated voice said the number didn't exist. He almost threw the disc away but stopped because, well, money. Back home, he accidentally walked in on his sister Kate in the bathroom plotless. He apologized in panic and locked himself in his room. He loaded the game, sat down, and logged in. The system told him his mission: destroy the Demon King and save the world. His starting task was simple: leave the village and head to Flora City. Suddenly, he was living inside the body of a normal villager. Everything felt insanely real: the sights, the textures, even pain. When an NPC showed up, he was blown away by the detail. She introduced herself as Alicia, his childhood friend, and said they were going apple picking today. Her brother Martin came in, gave Hiroshi an apple, and says that it keeps doctors away. The smell, the taste, it felt completely real. Hiroshi was officially hooked. Alicia also offered to peel it for him to eat. But when he asked how to reach Flora City, their faces went pale. They acted like he had just said something forbidden. Martin warned him to stop talking like that, while Alicia suggested going to the farm to discuss it privately. Hiroshi thought they were being dramatic and decided to go alone. Out of nowhere, Martin rushed forward and grabbed Hiroshi so hard that he could barely breathe. His voice wasn't calm anymore, it was full of panic. "Don't try to leave," Martin said, gripping him tighter. "People don't come back if they do." That was when Martin finally explained what kind of nightmare they were actually living in. Their hometown, Tito City, had been sealed off from the rest of the world to stop goblin attacks. Massive trenches surrounded the city like giant scars in the earth. Nobody was allowed to cross them. Citizens were banned from leaving, outsiders were blocked from entering unless they carried special permission, and all contact with the outside world had been cut completely. It wasn't a town anymore, it was a cage. Hiroshi still couldn't take it seriously. He laughed nervously and said he could wipe out a few goblins by himself. Alicia and Martin stared at him like he had completely lost his mind. Martin didn't argue back. Instead, he threw a punch. Hiroshi didn't even see it coming. A crushing blow smashed into his face, sending pain exploding through his head. He shouted in shock, his vision spinning. Before he could recover, another hit slammed into him, then another. Warm blood started dripping from his nose. While casually chewing on an apple, Martin mocked him. He said someone as weak as Hiroshi couldn't even beat a small animal, so talking about fighting monsters was a joke. That was when something inside Hiroshi snapped. In the real world, he had always been the easy target, ignored, pushed around, never taken seriously. Games were supposed to be the place where he could breathe. But even here, he was being crushed again. He shoved Martin away in anger. He didn't mean to hurt him. It was just a desperate push. But the knife in Martin's hand slid straight through his neck. The sound was quiet, too quiet. Martin dropped to the floor, lifeless. For a moment, everything froze. Then Alicia screamed. Her voice was filled with pure horror and hatred as she stared at her brother's body. Hiroshi tried to say it was an accident, but it didn't matter anymore. Martin was dead. Terrified, Hiroshi ran. That only made Alicia more dangerous. She chased him with terrifying speed, like a wild animal that wouldn't stop until its prey collapsed. Hiroshi ran through empty streets, narrow alleys, abandoned houses, anywhere he could hide. For days, he barely survived until he finally lost her in a maze of back roads. His legs were shaking, his chest burning. He whispered to himself that it was okay, that it was only a game. He believed if he logged out, everything would go back to normal. That's when a tiny glowing figure floated in front of him. It was Riona. She introduced herself as a hidden fairy guide created by the game company. NPCs and monsters couldn't see her, and she was meant to quietly support players behind the scenes. But she was too late. She looked at the tag above Hiroshi's name and went silent. It now read, Childhood Friend Slayer. Riona told him the truth from the moment he entered this world. He had fallen into the worst possible storyline. No matter how much he begged, the system wouldn't erase it. This game didn't reset. Everything was saved automatically. Logging out wouldn't undo anything. Breaking the console wouldn't help either. The data was locked directly into the hardware. Buying a new one would cost close to $1,000,000. She even joked that her shop sold them. Hiroshi shouted for a refund. She refused without hesitation. Then she revealed the real name of the game, Ultimate Quest. It was a hyper-realistic VR experiment, released only in small numbers, 10 years ago. Almost nobody played it anymore. Almost. One person had survived it, a man named Jinji. He had killed his childhood friend at the beginning too. If Hiroshi wanted to live, he had to find him. Riona told him to check his inventory. He had 30 gold coins. Since everyone already knew about Martin's death, he needed a disguise. At a clothing store, the merchant recognized him instantly. He didn't call the guards, but he raised the price of a shirt from 15 coins to 25, and hinted at consequences if Hiroshi refused. Hiroshi bought it. Just like the real world, power decided everything here too. Riona said Jinji had been hiding inside a casino for years, somewhere in the entertainment district. The city was massive and completely sealed off. Anyone who tried to escape without permission was executed. That was why no one dared to rebel. They headed toward the district. But instead of Jinji, Alicia found him. His disguise fooled strangers, but not her. Riona explained that the NPCs in this game weren't normal characters. They were powered by real artificial intelligence, able to think and feel like humans. Hiroshi told Alicia again that he never meant to kill her brother. To his shock, she accepted it. She apologized for screaming earlier and said she loved him deeply. Hiroshi finally relaxed, believing it was over. Then she smiled. Because she loved him, she said she would kill him too, so all three of them could reunite in the afterlife. She pulled out the same knife that had ended Martin's life, and promised to cut Hiroshi, just like she used to slice apples. Riona shouted for him to move. Hiroshi ran. They fled through forests and broken paths until he collapsed inside an abandoned wooden cabin. His entire body felt like it was tearing apart. His title updated again, Fast-Running Friend Killer. When he tried to pause the game, the menu wouldn't open. Riona realized the system wouldn't allow saving during combat. Alicia burst inside and slashed his arm. As she attacked again, Riona punched her eye, blinding her for a moment. That moment saved him. Hiroshi escaped and finally managed to log out. Back in his room, gasping for air, he stared at his shaking hands and wondered when the last time was that he had run that hard in real life. The next morning, Hiroshi didn't even wake up normally. His phone buzzed so hard it felt like it was trying to punch him out of bed. Still half dead sleepy, he grabbed it and saw a message from Riona. She was acting like yesterday wasn't a nightmare and invited him to hop back into the game after school, like it was just some casual let's play later text. Hiroshi stared at the screen for a few seconds, annoyed and nervous at the same time. He didn't reply. He wasn't sure if he wanted to ignore it forever, or if he was already addicted to the chaos. At school, he looked like he'd been through a war. During break, he found his friend Mori, and finally unloaded everything: the hyper-real VR world, the accidental kill, the crazy chase, the cursed labels floating over his head, and how the pain inside that game felt way too real for comfort. Mori listened, then immediately started clowning the game. He called it a trash tier scam, like the developers had created it just to ruin people's lives. The two of them laughed hard, because honestly it sounded so ridiculous that if you didn't laugh, you'd start panicking. But after the jokes, Mori got serious. He didn't want to insult Hiroshi's gaming hobby, but he gave him a real warning. If Hiroshi kept letting the game and its characters treat him like garbage, it would mess with his confidence even more. He told Hiroshi straight up, if you keep playing, those people will keep looking down on you, because you're basically teaching them they can. Hiroshi shrugged like he didn't care. But deep down, Mori's words stuck. That afternoon, Hiroshi came home exhausted, dropped his bag, and collapsed on his bed like his bones turned into noodles. He just lay there thinking about what Mori said, not fully agreeing, but also not able to forget it. Then, someone knocked on the door. Kayed, his little sister. She looked irritated and tired, like she hadn't slept properly. She told him he'd been yelling all night, not just mumbling, like full-on shouting. Everyone in the house got woken up. She said he needed to stop playing those stupid games late at night, because it was turning the whole house into a mess. And then she added something that hit harder than it should've. She told him to start running again, like he used to, instead of wasting his time in useless games. Hiroshi didn't argue. He just gave some vague answer like, yeah, okay, the kind you say when you want the conversation to end. As soon as Kayed left, Hiroshi did the exact opposite of what he promised. He logged back into the game. Instantly, it pulled him right back to the worst moment. He was still mid-escape, and his arm was still bleeding like crazy. No safe return, no restart. Just straight back to suffering. He forced himself to focus. Step 1 was treating the wound. He opened his inventory and found herbs. Great. But then he realized something annoying: the game didn't give instructions. No combine item, menu. No cute tutorial NPC. This world expected you to figure it out like real life. So Hiroshi did what every confused beginner does. He started poking the leaves and messing with them like maybe the game would feel sorry for him and auto-heal. It didn't. He pressed leaves on the cut. Nothing. He crushed them in his hand. Still nothing. He was basically doing plant arts and crafts while bleeding. Then a man stumbled toward him. The guy looked drunk, swaying as he walked, but the key detail was how he spoke. He wasn't talking like an NPC. He casually mentioned NPCs like it was normal vocabulary. That single word made Hiroshi lock in instantly. This wasn't a character. This was a player. And not just any player. This had to be Jinji. Hiroshi rushed up, introduced himself fast, and begged for help. Jinji looked tired, the way someone looks when they've been stuck in a brutal game for way too long. He sighed like, here we go again, another newbie. But he still helped. He took the herbs from Hiroshi and actually used them properly, crushed them, mixed them, applied them in a way that made sense. The bleeding slowed down, the pain eased, and Hiroshi finally felt like he wasn't seconds away from collapsing. Once Hiroshi could breathe again, Jinji led him into a casino to talk privately. Jinji offered him what looked like beer. Hiroshi refused immediately because he's underage. Jinji smirked and said it was cola. Hiroshi didn't trust him, but he took a sip anyway. It tasted like cola, but somehow Jinji was still acting drunk, like the cola was still messing him up. Either the game was weird, or Jinji was just built different. Hiroshi explained his whole situation, the killing, the label, the chase, and how he wanted to fix it. Jinji suddenly burst out laughing, and then started talking like there was someone sitting next to him. Hiroshi looked around the table and noticed something creepy. There were 4 chairs. Not 2, 4. That made Hiroshi suspicious, like Jinji wasn't just talking to himself for fun. Hiroshi asked the question straight, why did Jinji kill his best friend? Jinji's answer was terrifyingly casual. He said it was just young stupidity. His friend said a few annoying things, and he snapped. He killed him. Then he casually added he even killed his childhood sweetheart too. Hiroshi's face went blank. He couldn't understand how someone could say that like it was a joke. Hiroshi was messed up over one accident. Jinji sounded like he'd collected kills like trophies. Jinji explained the brutal truth. The body you use in this game is basically your real body. It's not like normal games where you're a superhuman hero with infinite stamina. You get tired, you feel pain. You panic, you can break mentally. And if you aren't strong or smart, you don't lose, you get destroyed. Jinji said that in 10 years, only one person ever cleared the game completely. A high school student named Kami, who was insanely strong and cleared it like it was nothing. His title was Unmatched Adventurer, and it sounded like the game itself admitted, yeah, this guy is different. Jinji's own title was something ugly, basically screaming that he was inhuman. Hiroshi asked what to do next, expecting actual advice. Instead, Jinji did the most evil thing possible. He yanked Hiroshi's cloak off and yelled to the whole casino that the friend killer was right there. He told Hiroshi to bluff during interrogation, and maybe he could escape punishment. Hiroshi didn't even get to respond. Guards swarmed in instantly, like they were waiting behind a curtain. It made zero sense how fast they arrived. But this game didn't care about logic, it cared about consequences. Hiroshi tried to run. Jinji tackled him. Then Jinji locked him in a chokehold and squeezed until Hiroshi's vision went dark. Even Jinji looked surprised, like he didn't expect it to take that much effort to knock Hiroshi out. When Hiroshi woke up, soldiers had already secured the area. He was captured, surrounded, no escape. And the truth came out, Jinji sold him out for drinking money. Then Jinji gave him advice like he was doing Hiroshi a favor. Deny everything. If he admitted it, he'd get sent to hard labor. Jinji claimed he knew prison life because he'd spent 13 years locked up in the game. Hiroshi was dragged out into public like a criminal on display. The townspeople threw rocks and insults like it was a festival. Some rocks even hit the guards escorting him, and the guards shoved the crowd back. But Hiroshi didn't care about the crowd anymore. He felt completely crushed. He had never felt this pathetic in his life, even in the real world. Out of desperation, his brain grabbed the only hero thing it could remember, the goddess at the beginning saying he was destined to save the world. He tried using that as a shield. He warned the guard that if they didn't let him go, they'd regret it. He declared that one day the world would come begging him to be a hero. The guard shut him down immediately. He said that he had enough listing this shit. Every thief, every robber, every loser dragged in chains says they're secretly the chosen one. And he was extra irritated because he was working overtime with no bonus pay. Hiroshi tried to speak again. Then he saw her. Alicia. Top on the roof. Holding the apple peeling knife. One eye damaged from the earlier punch. She didn't attack. She didn't even shout. She just stared and walked away into the darkness. That scared Hiroshi more than if she attacked, because it meant she wasn't done. Panicking, Hiroshi begged the guards to throw him in jail immediately. He'd rather sit in a cell than be alone in the streets with Alicia hunting him. They tossed him into a stone cell and left to prepare an interrogation. Hiroshi tried to pause the game to log out. It wouldn't let him. The story sequence was still active. He waited, exhausted. After around 30 minutes, he tried again. Still nothing. He tried again and again, getting more frustrated until he started yelling like an idiot. But yelling made him hungry, so he shut up, because even his stomach was bullying him now. Then hunger turned into something worse. He had to pee. He moved toward the prison toilet area, about to handle it like whatever, this is my life now. Then bam, Martin's ghost appeared. Hiroshi jolted so hard he fell backwards. Thankfully he didn't wet himself from fear. Martin's ghost was furious, cursing him, spitting blood, blaming him for the death. Hiroshi argued back, saying Martin was the one eating an apple while holding a knife like an idiot. So how was Hiroshi supposed to know that a shove would turn into murder? Martin paused. Then admitted Hiroshi had a point. He said it was partly his own fault too. But then, Martin brought up some promise they made long ago and demanded Hiroshi repeat it. Hiroshi had no idea what he was talking about. Because here's the truth, Hiroshi the player didn't have all of Hiroshi the character's memories. Martin realized that and got even angrier. He said he'd keep haunting Hiroshi until he remembered. That reminded Hiroshi of Jinji talking to empty seats earlier. Maybe Jinji wasn't crazy. Maybe he was haunted by the people he killed too. Martin clung to Hiroshi, spitting blood, crying about how he wanted to live longer. Hiroshi screamed for help. After several shouts, a girl finally answered. A crimson-haired girl. Small, but confident, the kind of person who definitely belonged in a prison environment. She freed Hiroshi and pulled him along quickly. As they walk, It's revealed that her name is Mizarisa. She took him to a sus room for some plot. Hiroshi didn't understand what was happening until she gave him a wicked smile and asked if he was ready. A bright red warning screen appeared asking if he was mentally prepared for extreme stimulation. Hiroshi's mind jumped to the adult content Riona mentioned earlier. Two sides of him fought, the sensible side screaming cancel, and the dumb curious side whispering maybe. Mizarisa laid him down and told him to close his eyes. In the silence, Hiroshi heard clothing shifting, like someone getting ready. He thought he understood what was about to happen. Then he heard metal tools clinking. That sound didn't match the fantasy. He opened his eyes and realized he was tied up. Mizarisa wasn't acting romantic at all, she looked like an interrogator. This wasn't pleasure, this was punishment. She said she heard him screaming about being haunted, so she was going to beat the ghost out of him. If he broke and confessed, he'd be executed. If he endured, Martin's death would be blamed on a demon, and Hiroshi would be released. Then she started cutting into his leg. Hiroshi screamed. The pain felt terrifyingly real, and the worse he screamed, the more satisfied Mizarisa looked like she enjoyed fear. That was when Riona finally appeared, responding to his earlier cries. She admitted she'd gotten distracted watching a movie and forgot their session. Hiroshi begged her to free him, but the restraints were too strong. Riona couldn't break them. All she could do was tell him to endure. The blade bit into his thigh lightly, drawing blood. Hiroshi felt like his brain was melting from pain. Desperate, he lost control and wet himself. Instead of stopping, Mizarisa got even more excited, saying she'd push it further. Hiroshi hit rock bottom. He stopped resisting completely and just gave up. Right as the blade was about to come down again, a guard burst in and canceled the interrogation. No detailed explanation, just one line, Captain Tesla ordered it. Then Hiroshi's title updated again into something humiliating, basically branding him as a friend-killing fast runner who wet himself. Riona was relieved he survived. Hiroshi felt nothing. No happiness. No victory. Just emptiness. He logged out instantly and swore he would never touch that game again. Back in real life, he woke up fast and checked his pants like he was traumatized. They were dry. He promised himself for real this time he wouldn't open that game again. There was a time when Hiroshi actually stepped back onto the track again. A district-level athletics meet was being held, and after avoiding running for ages, he finally decided to compete. Even though he'd disappeared from the sport for years, people still remembered him. Back in middle school, he wasn't just good, he was the kid everyone whispered about, the one who made races look unfair. Cade, his younger sister, came early to support him, yelling his name louder than anyone else. A little later, Mori arrived too, trying to hype him up. But Mori also warned him not to relax too much. There was a red-haired runner this time who was extremely strong and had been destroying everyone in practice. This wasn't some casual school race either. It was the first big-level competition since Hiroshi entered high school. Talent scouts were everywhere. People connected to inter-high leagues were watching closely. This event could literally change someone's future. All of that pressure made Hiroshi nervous, so he decided to calm himself down by going to the restroom. And that's when something wild happened. Inside, he ran into a tall foreigner who gave off serious athlete energy. Hiroshi recognized him immediately, Mike, the legendary runner, everyone called the king of second place. After retiring, Mike became a reporter. He told Hiroshi he was here specifically because he'd heard about the kid who broke the district sprint record. Mike said there were tons of talented teams here today, but the person he was most excited about was Hiroshi. That sentence alone filled Hiroshi with confidence he hadn't felt in years. But he got so caught up talking that he completely forgot to use the bathroom, and walked straight into the race while still needing to go. At the starting line, he exchanged trash talk with the red-haired runner. Just enough to get under each other's skin. Then the gun fired. Hiroshi messed up badly at the start. He was slow, clearly off rhythm. Panic almost took over, but he forced himself to breathe and focus. He pushed harder, past runner after runner, and slowly closed the gap. He was right behind the redhead. Victory was right there. And then he tripped. He slammed onto the track, watching the red-haired guy cross the finish line first. And as if the fall wasn't humiliating enough, his body betrayed him too. He lost control, in front of the entire crowd. Spectators, scouts, friends, family, everything went silent and then exploded. Hiroshi wanted the ground to swallow him whole. He rushed into the bathroom, washing his clothes like his life depended on it, wishing he could erase the last 5 minutes from existence. He finally threw his ruined pants into the trash, because even looking at them hurt. When he walked out, Katie tried to comfort him gently, but Hiroshi was drowning in frustration and shame. He snapped at her and waved her away, accidentally hurting her feelings. Katie saw this and ran off upset. Then Mike came over. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He told Hiroshi his performance was awful. Hiroshi tried explaining, but that only made Mike shake his head harder. Mike said the most important thing for an athlete wasn't talent, it was mindset. If you can't handle pressure, you're finished before the race even starts. Mike added that Hiroshi didn't just have running problems, he had personal issues he hadn't even noticed yet. Then he dropped one line, look inside yourself and change your tiny plot. To Mike it was advice, to Hiroshi it felt empty. Back in the present, Hiroshi woke up after quitting the VR game. At breakfast, Kaede complained that he needed to stop shouting at night and disturbing everyone. Hiroshi fired back that she wasn't exactly quiet when her friends visited. The argument escalated until their mother stepped in. Kaede blamed the game for turning Hiroshi into this. Hiroshi said he'd quit. She was shocked, but then disappointed. She said he always gives up halfway. He quit track, hidden games, and now he was quitting games too. She called him pathetic and stormed out. Their mom later told Hiroshi that Kaede only acted that way because she always bragged to her friends about how amazing he used to be. At school, the same two street punks demanded protection money again. Hiroshi didn't even resist, he just handed it over and walked away. When Mori tried to talk to him, Hiroshi ignored him. After class, his teacher asked about his future plans. Hiroshi said he still didn't know. Then his phone rang. Riona. She had been calling him non-stop and wanted to meet at the game shop. Hiroshi was thinking to go there to sell the game. At the shop, he told her straight up he was done. He wanted to sell it. She laughed and listed all the terrible things that happened to him in the game like it was entertainment. That made Hiroshi furious. If she wouldn't buy it, he said he'd sell it somewhere else. She stopped him and said she had reasons he couldn't understand yet. Then she told him about Kamui, the youngest Tokyo City Council member and the only player who had ever cleared the game. She showed him an interview where Kamui said the game changed his life. She even had Kamui's personal guide. Hiroshi didn't get it. If a guide existed, why hadn't anyone else beaten the game? Riona explained that Kamui wrote it years ago with insane arrogance. It was full of trash talk and insults so annoying that most people quit reading it. Sure enough, the guide immediately mocked Hiroshi. Kamui's first advice was insane physical training every day. Hiroshi skimmed ahead and found sections like my childhood friend wants to kill me, solution, die 4 times. Haunted by your best friend's ghost, solution. Let it follow you. Hidden sword locations. Extra item suggestions. Then more insults. Hiroshi was about to snap when Riona hugged him from behind and whispered that she wanted to marry anyone who could beat the game. He pushed her away instinctively. But when he saw the desperation in her eyes, he hesitated. And after all that, he got resolution to keep playing. Hiroshi logged back into the virtual world, and the system threw him straight into the mess without even a loading screen. He barely had time to blink before a guard shoved him forward with the blunt side of a weapon, telling him to move faster so he wouldn't cause another incident. Behind him, Mizarisa was still acting strangely cheerfully sus, saying they should meet again sometime. Hiroshi shut her down immediately. He wasn't joking anymore. She even said she wanted to keep the blanket from earlier like it was some kind of souvenir, which made his skin crawl. They dragged him through a hidden tunnel under the city, a long, narrow passage used to quietly move prisoners around. At the end of it stood a massive mansion that looked nothing like the broken streets outside. The soldier told him this place belonged to the person who currently controlled the sealed city, the leader of the royal guard, Chief Tesla. Inside, Tesla surprised him by acting polite. He even pulled out a chair and told Hiroshi to sit. Then he paused for half a second, sniffing the air with a tiny frown, like he'd noticed something unpleasant. Tesla finally explained everything. Alicia had accused Hiroshi of murdering her brother with a small knife, but when Tesla checked the scene himself, he didn't find that weapon anywhere. The only thing he saw was a blade Hiroshi could realistically handle. From Tesla's experience, piercing someone's throat cleanly with something tiny wasn't something amateurs could pull off. That kind of damage took serious technique, so he ruled the death an accident. Hearing that made Hiroshi feel like he'd finally met a sane person in this broken world. When Tesla offered him food, Hiroshi accepted instantly. Before letting him go, Tesla warned him that Alicia wouldn't accept this outcome. Even with the truth known, she would still hunt him. Tesla told him he could come back anytime if he needed protection. Hiroshi thanked him again and again. For the first time since entering this cursed game, he was no longer considered a criminal. His next mission was simple: return to his village and recover his sword. Riona said the trip would take days because the village was far from the center. But being innocent on paper didn't mean people would forgive him. The moment he stepped near the village, residents began throwing stones at him like they'd been waiting all morning for a target. Some of them didn't even care what really happened, they just wanted someone to punish. Hiroshi ran. When they ran out of rocks, they started chasing him with tools, farm gear, hammers, even shovels like a mob of enemies straight out of a shooter game. Riona said this was exactly how the real world worked. Even when someone is cleared, people only believe what fits their anger. If Hiroshi wanted to go home, he'd have to cross the bridge ahead, but guards were blocking it. Riona suggested preparing while the crowd calmed down. He needed items anyway, because Alicia would come again. Problem was, Hiroshi had almost no money. He asked how people earned cash here. Riona said it worked the same way as reality. Get a job, borrow, or steal. She casually mentioned that robbing an old couple was always an option. Hiroshi refused immediately, so she took him to an employment office, hidden in a broken-down area. The place looked like it was falling apart, cracked walls, dusty floors, hopeless atmosphere. The woman in charge didn't even use Hiroshi's name. She just called him Killer. She offered him a long-term job in the mines, but Hiroshi only wanted a few quick items. So he asked about short-term work. The woman suggested a side task involving an abusive employer who enjoyed hurting workers as part of the job. Hiroshi rejected it instantly. When he asked for something else, the woman snapped. She said there were thousands of people begging for work and kicked him out. Riona looked disappointed. Hiroshi wouldn't steal, and he couldn't accept violent labor. That left only one choice: borrow from another player. So Riona led him back to the casino to meet Jinji. Since Jinji was a real player, he could see Riona too, and they greeted each other casually. Hiroshi wasn't in the mood. Jinji laughed and said Hiroshi should actually be grateful if he hadn't betrayed him. The charges would never have been cleared. That comment flipped a switch. Hiroshi attacked. They crashed to the floor, rolling across the casino. Jinji almost knocked him out with brass knuckles, but Hiroshi dodged, grabbed his hair, and fought back. Jinji pinched his ribs hard, but Hiroshi forced him down in the end. Right as Hiroshi was about to finish it, Martin's ghost appeared again. The spirit accused him of becoming a murderer once more. Hiroshi froze, backing into a corner and pointing at empty air. Jinji understood immediately. He admitted the same thing happened to him. The ghosts of the two people he'd killed haunted him too. Sometimes for seconds, sometimes for hours. As he spoke, the spirits appeared again. Riona realized that guilt was the real reason Jinji stayed in the game. Hiroshi apologized. Jinji laughed it off and said at least the fight helped him stretch after years of sitting around. In the end, he agreed to lend Hiroshi the money. When they stepped outside, Riona smirked and asked Hiroshi how it felt to finally overpower someone who was stronger than him. He opened his mouth to answer, and then the game slapped him again. A glowing notice popped up in front of his eyes. His title had mutated. Now it didn't just paint him as a criminal. It basically turned him into a walking meme. The dude who murdered his childhood friend, sprints like a cheetah, humiliates himself in public, and apparently steals from elderly people. Hiroshi wanted to crawl into the pavement and vanish. Trying to ignore it, the two of them headed to buy smoke grenades. Inside the store, Hiroshi met the owner, a woman named Melissa who looked like she enjoyed judging people for a living. Jinji had only loaned him a small amount, so Hiroshi bought just 2 smoke bombs and carefully saved the rest of the coins in case something went wrong later. But Melissa wasn't finished. She suddenly announced a security inspection fee. Even though Hiroshi had officially been cleared, his name was still radioactive. Without blinking, she raised the price to match the exact amount he had left. When Hiroshi protested and tried to leave, armed guards blocked the exit and made it very clear that walking away wasn't an option. So he paid. Again, standing outside the shop with overpriced grenades, Hiroshi finally accepted a painful truth. Aside from Commander Tesla, every NPC in this city was just as corrupt as the real world. Days passed as they walked back toward his village. When Hiroshi reached the old house, where everything had collapsed, he carefully pushed the door open. The air inside was dead silent, too quiet. Cold crawled across his skin, and dark stains still marked the floor, refusing to fade. His sword rested in the corner like it had never been touched. For a moment, he thought he could simply grab it and walk away. Then the shadows shifted. Alicia stepped forward. She'd been waiting. Hiroshi grabbed for his smoke grenade, only to realize he had no lighter. Riona shouted that he forgot to buy one. Great timing. Alicia rushed him with the same small blade. Right as Hiroshi braced for impact, glass shattered and someone crashed through the window. He thought it was Tesla. It wasn't. It was Mizurisa. She immediately declared that Alicia was committing violent assault, and that ignoring the commander's verdict would result in arrest. When Hiroshi asked how she tracked him down, Mizurisa casually admitted she had followed his scent. Riona then dropped the horrible explanation Hiroshi hadn't changed clothes since logging in, so the odor still clung to him. Riona even suggested inviting Mizurisa to join the party because she was strong. Hiroshi barely had time to think before Alicia attacked again. Mizurisa yanked him backward, barely saving him. Alicia didn't care that Hiroshi had been cleared, she wanted him erased. Anyone in her way was disposable. Steel clashed. Alicia vanished mid-attack. For a split second nobody knew where she went until Riona screamed that she was clinging to the ceiling. Hiroshi panicked and hurled the knife Alicia had dropped outside. She simply pulled out 2 more like it was nothing. Mizurisa shifted into full combat mode. Hiroshi realized he could officially invite her to the party, but then she said something chilling. She wasn't here to protect him. She wanted to claim him and torment him herself. That meant he was trapped between 2 nightmares. Mizurisa had raw power. Alicia had insane speed. They collided again. Mizurisa deflected both knives with a perfect parry and raised her weapon for the finishing blow. But Alicia mocked her, pointing out that strength meant nothing without speed, then kicked her hard and knocked her unconscious. Alicia turned back to Hiroshi. Riona rushed in to distract her, but Alicia had learned her lesson and was now wearing eye protection. Hiroshi remembered Kamui's advice: exploit weaknesses. When Alicia lunged, he tried the most desperate distraction he could think of. It failed instantly. She floored him with one brutal kick and promised him a slow end. Just as he was ready to give up, Martin's ghost appeared not to save him, but to urge his sister to finish him faster. In pure desperation, Hiroshi stopped fighting and confessed. Right there, with death inches from his face, he spoke honestly. Alicia froze. He kept talking, not flirting, confessing regret, confusion, guilt. Her hands started shaking. Tears spilled as she screamed that even if it was an accident, her brother was still gone. Everything broke because Hiroshi tried to escape instead of staying. Then she ran. Hiroshi collapsed, realizing for the first time that this wasn't just a game. Later, he followed the memory of a promise made long ago beneath a massive ancient tree. When Martin appeared again and asked if he was ready to die, Hiroshi smiled and said he still had things left to do. He invited Martin to walk beside him. They remembered their childhood vow to stay friends forever. The spirit finally smiled and faded peacefully. Riona comforted Hiroshi afterward. Alicia still remained, but slowly they would face that. First, he needed to repair his sword, then change his pants, because his title had updated yet again. Ultimate Friend Slayer, Lightning Sprinter, Infamous Bed Wetter, Legendary Old Man Robber. Out of nowhere, a deep emergency bell thundered across the entire district. The sound wasn't normal. It felt like the world itself was screaming for help. Hiroshi bolted toward the noise and froze when he saw what was happening. The city was burning. Thick smoke rolled through the streets, buildings were lit up in flames, and people were pouring out of their homes in blind panic. Even Riona looked stunned. She admitted she had never seen this situation appear in the game before. Hiroshi rushed inside the chaos, trying to ask what was going on, but nobody listened. Everyone was too busy saving themselves to care about explaining anything. Riona told him this was how the system worked. It copied real human behavior perfectly. When disaster hits, nobody stops to give directions. Everyone only thinks about survival. She suggested he go to the blacksmith while pretending to fix his sword. At the forge, the blacksmith finally explained the disaster. Goblins were attacking the city. Hiroshi couldn't believe it wasn't the town protected by a giant moat. The blacksmith said it was, until the worst drought in 5 centuries dried it up. With the water gone, the monsters simply walked straight in. Seeing this as his chance to prove himself, Hiroshi begged the blacksmith to repair his sword so he could fight. The blacksmith laughed bitterly and told him he had no time. He was running for his life. If Hiroshi wanted the blade fixed, he'd have to do it himself. So Hiroshi tried sharpening it. As he worked, terrified screams echoed outside. He got impatient, feeling useless while people were being attacked. Riona stopped him and said something strange. Sometimes an unpolished weapon could be more dangerous than a perfect one. That logic actually made sense. Hiroshi moved toward the exit and Riona instantly blocked him. She told him bluntly that he was not ready. If he went out there, his survival odds weren't low, they were negative. If he died in this game, it wouldn't just be a game over. His access would be permanently revoked, and his hardware would be destroyed. Riona even admitted the truth. Someone had already lost everything after dying inside the game. The company had silenced the case with lawsuits and money. Protests followed. The game vanished from public attention shortly after launch. That was why she never told him when he tried to sell it. She tricked him instead. Riona begged him to log out and contact Kamui. But Hiroshi asked to just see the goblins once. She agreed, but warned him not to speak or move. He cracked the door open slightly and almost fainted. The goblins were nothing like fantasy cartoons. They were tall, twisted, and moved with insane speed. After watching for only a moment, he was ready to leave. Then he heard a child scream. A goblin had locked onto a little girl. Hiroshi instantly ran toward her, but Riona yanked him back, yelling about how expensive the console was. She even joked about discount prices. Hiroshi snapped. What kind of person cared about money right now? Riona said the girl wasn't real. But Martin's face flashed in Hiroshi's mind. Real or not, someone was about to die and he couldn't look away. 3 soldiers rushed in to defend the child. They didn't last 10 seconds. The goblin tore through them like paper. One lost an arm instantly. Another was cut apart before he could scream. The third was mutilated and thrown aside. Hiroshi felt sick. Riona explained this was why beginners were told to flee the city instantly. Hiroshi asked if anyone could defeat them. She named 2. Kamui and Ada, a real-world boxing champion who once said goblins were his toughest opponents. Even knowing this, Hiroshi moved. Riona sighed and told him to at least change his clothes. He grabbed spare pants from the forge, took position, and waited for her distraction signal. When the goblin turned, Hiroshi sprinted only to realize there were 2 monsters. Still, he shouted at the girl to run while he followed. They chased her. In a final burst of willpower, he triggered his acceleration skill and snatched her away at the last possible moment. Before he could celebrate, a golden flash split the smoke. Chief Tesla arrived. With a single slash, he erased both goblins. Soldiers followed, escorting the girl safely away. For the first time since entering the game, Hiroshi felt like a hero. His ridiculous title updated again now, including a new honor that barely made sense, but somehow felt earned. After the smoke cleared, Commander Tesla arrives. Unlike everyone else, who was rushing around in panic mode, Tesla walked calmly, as if the chaos didn't exist. His armor still glowed faintly from battle, and the soldiers nearby instantly straightened their backs when they saw him. "I saw what you did," Tesla said quietly. Hiroshi swallowed. He expected to get scolded for being reckless. Instead, Tesla nodded slowly. "You were afraid," Tesla continued, "but you didn't hesitate. That's not something I can train into people." Then Tesla surprised him. He offered Hiroshi a chance to become a hired fighter for the city, a temporary mercenary under royal command. Someone who would stand with the guards when things got ugly again. Hiroshi didn't stop to think. He accepted immediately. Staying close to Tesla meant safety. It meant not being alone anymore. It meant having someone powerful behind him instead of being chased like prey. Tesla said Hiroshi would be taken to the royal training grounds to prepare. The words sounded heavy, like a contract written in blood rather than ink. Before the next wave of events started, Hiroshi opened the menu, saved his progress, and disconnected. In the real world, Hiroshi lay on his bed staring at the ceiling, his heart still pounding. For once, the game didn't feel like an escape, it felt like something that was shaping him. At school, he told Mori about everything that had happened. The monsters, the fire, Tesla's offer. Mori smiled in a way Hiroshi hadn't seen in a long time. "You look different," Mori said. "Not broken, just alive." That night, before logging back in, Hiroshi pulled up Kamui's infamous survival guide. Kamui explained that leaving the starter city was almost impossible without planning. According to the guide, there were only 3 reliable routes. Route 1, grind endlessly. Clear side missions, raise your reputation, make the city trust you enough to grant legal permission to leave. Route 2, escape through the forgotten gate behind the city, but that path always overlapped with goblin movement zones. Anyone weak would be slaughtered instantly. Route 3, hide during the goblin crisis. Stay invisible for 4 days while the city collapsed, then slip out after the monsters were gone. Kamui also mentioned Tesla's royal guard path and immediately mocked it. He said, anyone who chose to fight under Tesla was basically signing a death contract. The survival rate was so low he sarcastically wrote it as 300% fatal. Still, Kamui admitted something interesting. If your account already carried heavy negative titles, especially the infamous friend killer tag, then the game systems treated you differently. Not kindly. Just differently. Before explaining anything else, Kamui forced the reader to promise not to quit halfway. Then he congratulated Hiroshi for escaping 2 nightmare conditions, the haunting spirit and the obsessive childhood friend chase. Finally, Kamui dropped the real number. You have a 0.5% chance to survive this path. Step 1. Live through 5 brutal training days. Step 2. Survive the next goblin siege. Only then would the game reveal its deeper mechanics. Hiroshi closed the guide, trembling. I'm not buying another console. He whispered. He went to his sister Kaede and told her he planned to finish the game no matter what. He warned her that he might be loud during the next few nights but promised he wasn't quitting like he had with Track. This time, he would see things through. Then he logged back in. Tesla escorted Hiroshi straight to the royal palace. The ruler of the city, Queen Govern, greeted him personally. She didn't act distant like royalty usually did. Instead, she suddenly wrapped her arms around him and thanked him for protecting the city. Hiroshi was so overwhelmed that he accidentally made a weird sound that echoed in the hall. Tesla pretended nothing happened. Afterward, Hiroshi was brought to the training grounds and introduced to 2 other rookies, Granada and Paluwu. They looked nervous but determined. Their mission was simple: be ready to repel goblins attacking the castle. Tesla left them in the hands of an officer named Bob. Bob showed Hiroshi to a private room. Riona whispered for him to listen carefully whenever Bob talked. He might reveal hidden mechanics without realizing it. Training began immediately. Bob explained sword basics, posture, balance, and footwork. He encouraged Hiroshi, telling him not to rush things. But when Bob examined Hiroshi's physique, he frowned. "You're built more for strategy than combat," Bob said. Hiroshi instantly denied it. At the main yard, Hiroshi's heart dropped. The instructor was the same soldier who had arrested him earlier. That man clearly despised him. From the first drill, Hiroshi was given harder exercises than Natada and Balu. Longer sprints, more repetitions, less rest. When the soldier left, Kathy, the girl who had escorted the rescued child, came over to greet Hiroshi. She thanked him sincerely for what he had done. But the instructor returned and forced Hiroshi back into training. Sparring followed. Hiroshi was destroyed in seconds. The soldier mocked him openly, calling him slower than a snail. Natada stepped in and silenced the instructor with pure power, but the damage was done. From that moment on, Hiroshi was invisible. No one expected anything from him anymore. That night, Hiroshi collapsed onto his bed and whispered to himself, 4 more days. The next day, exhaustion hit him like a truck. He overslept. Riona woke him in panic. When he ran outside, no one even noticed him. All attention was on Natada. A soldier named Amos ordered Hiroshi to practice sword swings non-stop. While he trained, Natada and Balu confronted him about his reputation. Hiroshi denied everything, but they didn't believe him. Natada warned him not to drag others down. Kathy stepped in and ended the confrontation. She trained with Hiroshi afterward, correcting his form and helping him improve. On day 3, Hiroshi was matched against Natada. One strike ended the fight. The humiliation crushed him. Later, he sat alone, staring at the dirt. Riona tried to comfort him, but Hiroshi admitted he never imagined it would be this brutal. She dragged him to a counseling room. Hiroshi vented about being weak, isolated, and bullied. The counselor listened and then blamed him completely. "You chose this path without the ability to walk it," the counselor said. Hiroshi left angrier than before. Kathy later suggested prayer. At the church, the nun poured cold water over Hiroshi's head and called it purification. Nothing changed. On the 4th day, Hiroshi was beaten again, and he still didn't quit. By the time Amos finally stopped ordering him around, Hiroshi could barely feel his arms. His shoulders burned like they were on fire, and every time he tried to straighten his back, pain shot up his spine. He thought at least the worst part of the day was over. He was wrong. As soon as Amos walked away, Granada and Palu stepped in front of him, with fake smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "So, got anything on you today?" one of them asked, tapping Hiroshi's pocket. Hiroshi shook his head and said he didn't have any money. That was all it took. They grabbed him, slammed him onto the dirt, and started punching him like it was nothing more than another drill. Hiroshi curled into himself, trying to protect his head, hearing only laughter and boots scraping against the ground. Kathy saw what was happening and sprinted off to get Amos. When Amos finally arrived, Hiroshi thought things would change. They didn't. Amos stared at the scene with cold eyes and said it was just rookie discipline, then walked away like he hadn't seen anything. It was so heartless that even Riona cracked a joke, as if the whole thing were just some ugly side quest. That was when Hiroshi lost it. He snapped at Riona, shouting that none of this was funny. Kathy turned and saw him arguing with empty air. That was all Granada and Palu needed. They warned Kathy that if she kept hanging around Hiroshi, she'd end up being beaten too. Kathy hesitated, only a moment before shaking her head and telling them she didn't even know him. Hiroshi felt something crack inside his chest. He was being crushed here, the same way he was in real life, isolated, blamed, discarded, and in the real world, he at least still had Mori. But even that felt fragile now. If he stayed weak, betrayal wasn't a question of if, but when. As Natada and Balu laughed at him from afar, Riona even joined in for a second, leaving Hiroshi unable to tell whether she was mocking him or hiding sympathy behind jokes. Then she stopped laughing. Maybe out of guilt, maybe pity, but she promised she would help him. The 5th morning came with tension thick enough to choke on. Natada was the first to scream. Someone had stolen his running shoes, the pair his mother had handmade for him, and tossed them into the sewage channel behind the barracks. Natada looked like he was ready to kill someone with his bare hands. Then it got worse. His sword vanished too. Later, it was found jammed deep inside a toilet stall like a cruel prank. Everyone instantly turned toward Hiroshi. No one else had been publicly humiliated by Natada before. In their eyes, he was the only possible culprit. Natada charged at him, but Bob stepped between them, demanding proof. Several soldiers spoke up, saying they hadn't seen Hiroshi anywhere near Natada's locker. Before the argument could finish, a scream echoed from the locker room. The team rushed inside and found the cook crying hysterically. Her undergarments had been stolen and were now sitting inside Natada's bag. Now Natada wasn't just angry. He was labeled a pervert. Balu immediately switched sides, cursing Natada along with everyone else. Soldiers mocked him, shouted insults, and forced him out of the building. For the first time, the bully tasted humiliation. Later that evening, news spread that Natada had been removed from service. Then Tesla arrived. He brought a written report accusing Amos of stealing the shoes, sabotaging the sword, and framing Natada. The motive was revenge. Amos couldn't stand being humiliated after losing to Natada earlier. The letter was signed by Balu. Everything collapsed instantly. Balu screamed at Amos. Amos shouted back. The unit exploded into chaos. Tesla asked if anyone could confirm the contents. Kathy stepped forward first. Then others followed. Amos was dismissed on the spot. Tesla announced that a new commander would take over soon. Kathy and several others apologized to Hiroshi, but he already knew the truth. Riona had planned all of it. Even though he was grateful, part of him thought, making an old man cry like that crossed the line. Tomorrow was the goblin assault, and Hiroshi still didn't feel ready. When Riona asked if he wanted to quit, he shook his head. "I'll keep going," he said. "Even if I die, I'll die after trying." That was when Riona finally told him the truth. She didn't make him play this game just for fun. 10 years ago, when she was still human, she met Kamui. She liked him not in some childish way, but seriously. When she learned he was leaving Ted, she confessed her feelings. He rejected her. Not gently. He said her appearance scared him. And that humiliation burned into her soul. Since then, she'd waited for someone who could overthrow Kamui's legacy. And when that person appeared, she would stand beside him and make Kamui watch. That was her revenge. And now Hiroshi was standing in the middle of it. That night, Hiroshi couldn't calm his mind, no matter how hard he tried. His body was tired, but his head kept spinning, so he quietly stepped outside to breathe some cool air. What surprised him was how perfectly everything had already been prepared, as if Riona had predicted his move. Seeing that made his chest feel heavy, because it felt like his struggle wasn't really his own anymore. Everything seemed to be following her script instead of his. A little while later, Tesla appeared as well. The commander admitted he also couldn't rest, since no one could guess when the goblins would strike. They stood there talking for a long time, and during that conversation, Tesla realized Hiroshi wanted to escape the city someday. Tesla confessed that he felt the same way. If he weren't tied down by his position as captain, he would leave too. He wanted to explore the outside world instead of staying trapped inside walls. He even promised that if they both survived the coming battle, he would go together with Hiroshi. After that, Hiroshi logged out to look at Kamui's guide again. The moment he opened his eyes in the real world, he nearly jumped because Kaide was staring straight at him. He asked why she was in his room, and she replied that she had been calling him for breakfast, but he never answered, so she came in to make sure nothing was wrong. Once she saw that he was fine, she quietly left. He immediately opened Kamui's guide and started reading the part about the goblin invasion. Just like always, Kamui began by insulting him nonstop, calling him useless before even giving advice. Kamui made him agree to a strange promise first, and only then revealed a single trick that shocked Hiroshi. Right after that, the site crashed, leaving him staring at the screen while thinking deeply about what he had just read. When Hiroshi logged back into the game on the 6th day, the goblin event had already started. Riona was way too energetic, fussing over him like a worried parent, asking whether he had eaten properly or gone to the bathroom. Tesla soon gathered everyone and introduced the commanders for the operation, Mizarissa and Alicia. Just hearing their names made Hiroshi's stomach drop. Now, he wasn't only worried about goblins anymore, especially with Alicia's cold stare fixed on him. Tesla gave a speech to raise morale, but since no monsters had shown up yet, he ordered the troops to spread out and patrol the city. Hiroshi was assigned to the Eastern District, which happened to be his own village. To his horror, Tesla deliberately sent Mizarissa and Alicia with him, hoping the three of them could settle their unfinished business. Hiroshi begged him to change his mind, but Tesla refused, saying they needed to work together. With no choice left, Hiroshi followed the two women, carefully keeping his distance. The streets were quiet, with most houses tightly sealed. Then suddenly, a thief ran toward them carrying a bag and shoved Hiroshi aside. Alicia instantly cut off the thief's hand, and Hiroshi returned the bag to the victim, who fainted on the spot. Mizarissa questioned the thief, who admitted someone had told people to rob while soldiers were distracted. He also said similar crimes were happening everywhere. When Hiroshi asked where the mastermind was, the thief pointed toward the casino. They rushed there and saw civilians tied up inside. A bald man looked like the leader, so Mizarissa and Alicia attacked while Hiroshi freed the hostages. That's when he saw Genji among them. Jinji explained their plan to sell people abroad, but after the bald man was defeated, it became obvious he wasn't in charge. Jinji was. He grabbed Hiroshi in a chokehold and threatened to kill him. This time, Hiroshi didn't freeze. He slammed his elbow into Jinji's stomach and broke free. Mizarasa wanted to finish him, but Hiroshi insisted on handling it himself. Jinji had prepared brass knuckles, but before anything could happen, Alicia knocked him out with one punch, telling Hiroshi to stop humiliating himself. All the criminals were arrested, and Jinji revealed he had done everything just to get sent to prison and avoid the goblins. Hiroshi could only feel disgust toward him. Then alarms rang out. The western gate had been breached. Everyone rushed to fight, but Hiroshi suddenly felt severe stomach pain and ran off pretending it was a shortcut. After finishing in the restroom, he looked up and saw a goblin staring at him. He screamed for Riona, but outside the game, she misunderstood. Mizarisa arrived, killed the goblin, then stabbed Hiroshi's leg, while Alicia walked in. As the two women argued, Hiroshi slipped away again, clutching his stomach. Once he calmed down, Riona told him to go to the north gate where the others were waiting. Hiroshi dashes across the battlefield and barely makes it in time to witness Tesla's squad lining up against a terrifying swarm of goblins. There aren't just a few enemies either. The streets are packed with them, wild, aggressive, and mixed with several elite-class monsters that look way stronger than normal. The clash that follows is pure chaos. Tesla tears through entire groups at once using massive area attacks that light up the field. Risa moves in like she's having the time of her life, carving through enemies with a twisted smile. Alicia doesn't charge in head-on, she slips through blind spots and drops targets from the darkness, while background fighters fall all around like disposable extras in a movie scene. Just when the last wave is wiped out, Kathy and Bob sprint over in panic. They report that another force has already smashed through the west gate and is storming straight toward the Queen's residence. Tesla senses something huge waiting there. Without hesitation, he orders the others to stay and protect the area while he rushes off by himself. Hiroshi trails behind, not sure whether he's actually helping or just slowing everyone down. When they reach the mansion grounds, they find the source of the disaster. A gigantic crimson orc with a single eye is tearing soldiers apart. Tesla admits this beast is an old enemy and that he's the one who blinded it before. He tells the troops to retrieve an iron cage while he holds it off. Every time their weapons collide, the sound blasts through the air. Hiroshi watches in frozen awe, knowing this monster is on another level. His legs won't move until Risa and Alicia appear and tell him to stand back. Risa rushes first and is instantly smashed into a wall and knocked unconscious. Alicia jumps in next, matching the creature's speed with her own, turning the fight into a lightning-fast exchange. The battle only shifts when soldiers drag in a cage holding goblin children. Their cries make the one-eyed orc falter, giving Tesla the opening to strike it down. But Hiroshi feels something is wrong. It all feels too smooth, nothing like the nightmare Kamui warned about. Staring at the trapped goblin kids, he realizes they must have been imprisoned long before today. He confronts Tesla. The commander stays silent, finishes off the monster, and locks eyes with Hiroshi, a look that clearly says, "You've learned too much." The ruler suddenly steps forward and drops the mask. She admits that she had ordered the capture of young goblins on purpose, using them as bait to trigger wave after wave of monster raids. By doing that, she could keep playing the hero, rallying the citizens around her and slowly turning the city into her own isolated state, cut off from outside nations and impossible to escape. Tesla wasn't her shield, he was her partner. Together, they had been manipulating fear to stay in power. The commander Hiroshi once respected is exposed as nothing more than a fraud. After stirring everyone into a frenzy, he quietly gets rid of soldiers who know too much so no one can speak out. And now, the next loose end is Hiroshi himself. At that moment, Kamui's insane 300% fatality warning finally makes sense. From the very first step of this route, you're forced into a boss fight designed to crush you. Tesla doesn't hesitate. He releases his strongest technique, aiming to erase Hiroshi instantly. Frozen in terror, Hiroshi can only beg for it to end quickly, but Alicia jumps in and blocks the blow. When he asks why she would save him, she explains that Martin came to her in a dream and told her to let go of the past. She says she's forgiven him, that she'd been guarding him in secret, and that she was glad he finally spoke his feelings. She tells him to keep living for her and for her brother. Then she collapses in his arms. Hiroshi desperately asks Riona if characters like her can be brought back. The answer is cruel and final: once they're gone, they're gone. All his life, both inside the game and outside it, he's been treated like dead weight. He survived by staying quiet. But not anymore. When Tesla charges again, Hiroshi moves without thinking, parrying every blow, using the strange techniques Kamui had taught him. He remembers Kamui's words. In this world, power doesn't rise from numbers alone. It reacts to emotion, but only the positive kind. faith in yourself, burning determination. Courage that comes from deep inside. Those aren't cheats, Kamui said. That's how reality works. Something inside Hiroshi finally snaps into place. He surges forward, striking again and again, pushing Tesla into nothing but defense. In one heartbeat, he knocks Tesla's weapon aside and goes for the final hit, but his beginner blade can't pierce elite armor. Accepting the end, he closes his eyes as Tesla draws a second sword. Then Martin appears. Hiroshi breaks down, apologizing for failing Alicia. Martin just smiles, reminding him of the promise they made long ago, back when Hiroshi had invited him to explore the world together. This was the moment, Martin says. The moment to stand up. Back in the battlefield, Hiroshi's shattered sword flares with dark light and explodes Tesla's weapon. It has transformed into the demon blade. Both warriors take their final stances. Tesla charges with everything he has, moving faster than sight, and Hiroshi braces himself. Before their clash can end, the queen suddenly steps between them. She shoves Hiroshi aside and impales herself on Tesla's strike. And just like that, the game ends. Hiroshi jolts awake, and the first thing he notices is the smell. His console is burning, sparks crawling over the casing, like it's being erased from existence. By morning, the shock turns into a heavy, hollow sadness. He goes to the shop to see Riona, expecting jokes, but instead, she looks genuinely shaken. Even she hadn't imagined the game could end like that. She tries to cheer him up and casually offers to lend him another system, asking if he's willing to jump back in. Hiroshi doesn't answer right away. He tells her he'll decide later. Back at home, he powers on his computer just to close Kamui's guide and forget about everything. Instead, a fresh section loads on the page, its title practically mocking him. You have died and your console has been destroyed. Kamui had warned him this wasn't some fantasy world. The rules applied beyond the screen. Still, the message isn't only cruel. It explains that if he truly trusts himself, he can roll the clock back. All he needs is a replacement console, the same ruined disk, and to input the special recovery code 10 times. If fortune is on his side, the system will rewind him to roughly 1 hour before his death. The thought of Alicia is what finally pushes him forward. He decides he won't dive back in immediately. This time, he'll be ready. From that day on, he changes. Each morning he trains instead of wasting time. Slowly, his family notices the difference in his eyes. His teacher, still hearing no clear answer about Hiroshi's future, stops pressing him because he senses something solid growing inside the boy. Even the two bullies who used to squeeze him for cash back off after he scares them away without raising his voice. A month passes. And when Hiroshi finally stands up to return to the battlefield, he isn't the same kid anymore. This time, he's going back not to survive but to protect everyone. And that's where this video ends. If you enjoyed watching till the end, make sure to like and subscribe to channel, and also watch this following video.